To her children, Emma, Vivian, Tess, John Peter, Liam, Juliet, and Benjamin, thank you for sharing your incredible mom with our country. Thank you very much. Amy Coney Barrett will decide cases based on the text of the Constitution as written. As Amy has said, being a judge takes courage. You are not there to decide cases as you may prefer. You are there to do your duty and to follow the law wherever it may take you. That is exactly what Judge Barrett will do on the U.S. Supreme Court. I want to thank the members of the Senate. We have so many of them here today. Thank you very much. I see you in the audience, and you're so proud. But I want to thank you for your commitment and to providing a fair and timely hearing. I know it will be that. Judge Barrett was confirmed to the Circuit Court 3 years ago by a bipartisan vote. Her qualifications are unsurpassed, and her record is beyond reproach. This should be a straightforward and prompt confirmation. It should be very easy. Good luck. It's going to be very quick. I'm sure it'll be extremely non-controversial. We said that the last time, didn't we? Well, thank you all very much, and thank you for being here. That's really great. Thank you. Thank you. I further urge all members of the other side of the aisle to provide Judge Barrett with the respectful and dignified hearing that she deserves, and frankly, that our country deserves. I urge lawmakers and members of the media to refrain from personal or partisan attacks, and the stakes for our country are incredibly high. Rulings that the Supreme Court will issue in the coming years will decide the survival of our Second Amendment, our religious liberty, our public safety, and so much more. To maintain security, liberty, and prosperity, we must preserve our priceless heritage of a nation of laws, and there is no one better to do that than Amy Coney Barrett. Law and order is the foundation of the American system of justice. No matter the issue, no matter the case before her, I am supremely confident that Judge Barrett will issue rulings based solely upon a fair reading of the law. She will defend the sacred principle of equal justice for citizens of every race, color, religion, and creed. Congratulations again to Judge Barrett. I know that you will make our country very, very proud. Please, Amy, say a few words. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am deeply honored by the confidence that you have placed in me. And I am so grateful to you and the First Lady, to the Vice President and the Second Lady, and to so many others here for your kindness on this rather overwhelming occasion. I fully understand that this is a momentous decision for a president. And if the Senate does me the honor of confirming me, I pledge to discharge the responsibilities of this job to the very best of my ability. I love the United States, and I love the United States Constitution. I am truly humbled by the prospect of serving on the Supreme Court. Should I be confirmed, I will be mindful of who came before me. The flag of the United States is still flying at half-staff in memory of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg to mark the end of a great American life. Justice Ginsburg began her career at a time when women were not welcome in the legal profession. But she not only broke glass ceilings, she smashed them. For that, she has won the admiration of women across the country and indeed all over the world. Yes. She was a woman of enormous talent and consequence, and her life of public service serves as an example to us all. Particularly poignant to me was her long and deep friendship with Justice Antonin Scalia, my own mentor. Justices Scalia and Ginsburg disagreed fiercely in print without rancor in person. Their ability to maintain a warm and rich friendship, despite their differences, even inspired an opera. These two great Americans demonstrated that arguments, even about matters of great consequence, need not destroy affection. In both my personal and professional relationships, I strive to meet that standard. I was lucky enough to clerk for Justice Scalia, and given his incalculable influence on my life, I am very moved to have members of the Scalia family here today, including his dear wife, Maureen. I clerked for Justice Scalia more than 20 years ago, but the lessons I learned still resonate. His judicial philosophy is mine too. A judge must apply the law as written. Judges are not policymakers, and they must be resolute in setting aside any policy views they might hold. The president has asked me to become the 9th justice, and as it happens, I'm used to being in a group of 9, my family. Our family includes me, my husband Jesse, Emma, Vivian, Tess, John Peter, Liam, Juliet, and Benjamin. Vivian and John Peter, as the president said, were born in Haiti, and they came to us 5 years apart when they were very young. And the most revealing fact about Benjamin, our youngest, is that his brothers and sisters unreservedly identify him as their favorite sibling. Our children obviously make our life very full. While I am a judge, I'm better known back home as a room parent, carpool driver, and birthday party planner. When schools went remote last spring, I tried on another hat. Jesse and I became co-principals of the Barrett e-Learning Academy. And yes, the list of enrolled students was a very long one. Our children are my greatest joy, even though they deprive me of any reasonable amount of sleep. I couldn't manage this very full life without the unwavering support of my husband, Jesse. At the start of our marriage, I imagined that we would run our household as partners. As it has turned out, Jesse does far more than his share of the work. To my chagrin, I learned at dinner recently that my children consider him to be the better cook. For 21 years, Jesse has asked me every single morning what he can do for me that day. And though I almost always say nothing, he still finds ways to take things off my plate. And that's not because he has a lot of free time. He has a busy law practice. It's because he is a superb and generous husband, and I am very fortunate. Jesse and I... Jesse and I have a life full of relationships, not only with our children, but with siblings, friends, and fearless babysitters, one of whom is with us today. I am particularly grateful to my parents, Mike and Linda Coney. I have spent the bulk of my adulthood as a Midwesterner, but I grew up in their New Orleans home. And as my brother and sisters can also attest, Mom and Dad's generosity extends not only to us, but to more people than any of us could count. They are an inspiration. It is important at a moment like this to acknowledge family and friends. But this evening, I also want to acknowledge you, my fellow Americans. The President has nominated me to serve on the United States Supreme Court, and that institution belongs to all of us. If confirmed, I would not assume that role for the sake of those in my own circle, and certainly not for my own sake. I would assume this role to serve you. I would discharge the judicial oath, which requires me to administer justice without respect to persons, do equal right to the poor and rich, and faithfully and impartially discharge my duties under the United States Constitution. I have no illusions that the road ahead of me will be easy, either for the short term or the long haul. I never imagined that I would find myself in this position. But now that I am, I assure you that I will meet the challenge with both humility and courage. Members of the United States Senate, I look forward to working with you during the confirmation process, and I will do my very best to demonstrate that I am worthy of your support. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Radical Democracy Show. I'm your host, Kamali Rose. What we watched there just now was Donald Trump announcing his Supreme Court nominee. That's Justice Coney Barrett, and this news had broken as of yesterday, so this was the expectation as of the news that broke yesterday, and it's what we discussed on the show yesterday. So no big surprise there. The real question, I think, is for everyone is what next? You know, where do we go from here? So there's a few things that can happen, and then we can also talk about what we expect to happen as well. So shout out to X. I see you in the comments there. What's up, X? Appreciate you being here. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button, hit that like button down below, subscribe to the channel, and share this stream out if you can. I see you got to go, X. No worries, no worries. Yep. X says, here we go, playing the game. How much damage can Trump do to society? Yeah. So it's like, that's going to be, this is what they threaten us with. What I've seen a lot of going on Twitter. They got Jill Stein was trending earlier because people are coming out here trying to blame Jill Stein voters from 2016, saying, oh, you know, it's your fault, you few million people, when even though 100 million people didn't vote at all, because you know, the message that the candidate was offering was not moving the plurality of people. The largest voting bloc in this country is non-voters, and we have to remember that when we talk about stuff like that. So yeah, what do you think of this Supreme Court pick? If you have any thoughts, please share them in the comments. I know for me, the immediate reaction is that, you know, this is, by any measure, it's not like it's a controversial pick by necessarily based on who she is per se. I mean, this is what you would expect out of this is someone straight off of the Federalist Society. It's straight off of their list, and they provide, you know, Donald Trump with the list. And so this is the same thing that you would get under a standard Republican. Nothing extreme or anything. It's not like she's got some past like Brett Kavanaugh or something like that. She's just a far right winger, like what she's to the right of Brett Kavanaugh, believe it or not. So politically, yeah, she's every bit as awful as what you would expect out of a Donald Trump nominee. But the real controversy here around this pick is with the timing of it. Of course, it was Republicans back in 2016 who famously said that we should not be nominating or confirming judges in election years. Now they seem to have moved the goalposts and they're saying you shouldn't confirm a Supreme Court justice in election years if the controlling party and the presidency is not an opposition part. Like they're trying to just move the goalpost, saying that, well, if it's not, since the Senate is elected, then that must be the mandate, since the Senate is Republican controlled and it's not an opposition controlled Senate, then they have a duty now to confirm the Supreme Court justice just weeks before an election. And their argument was, oh, you got to let the American people decide. Let the American people decide. Here now, we'll see if they care about letting the American people decide. One, he wouldn't have, if they cared about letting the American people decide, would he have nominated anyone in the first place? I don't think so. Now, what could happen next? So the reality is what we've seen from the Democrats already. They've already started to show their hand and show that they're, Dianne Feinstein. I think White House, I believe, came out and said the same thing. Senator Whitehouse came out and said the same thing. And I forget, there were a couple more who came out and already have tipped their hand in saying that they plan to go ahead and entertain they won't entertain the idea of blocking the nomination, attempting to block the nomination by refusing by protesting essentially the actual hearing and refusing to participate in the hearing. And so they won't boycott the hearing or whatever it's called. And so they are already starting to show that they're willing to bend the knee to the Republicans here and to Donald Trump. So what you expect is, sadly, that whatever the Republicans want here, they're going to get. If they want to nominate before the election, there was a chance that maybe the Republicans don't want to nominate before the election because maybe it would be bad for some in some of the Senate races, and you might have a situation where somebody could be, it could be a tight election, and something like this could in a purple state, and something like this could swing it in the other direction, or towards the Democrat, if the Democratic base is so outraged that Donald Trump is picking, just picked another Supreme Court justice, or, they feel like, oh, the Republicans didn't respect, they were hypocritical, and they were here. Let's be real. This will be extremely hypocritical of them if they do this, but hypocrisy doesn't work on them. So yes, it's hypocritical of them, but they're not going to alter their course because of that. So X says, I think he's picking her to further right-wing agendas and appeal to his base to tighten up the presidential race. Yeah, I think that this does, I think it throws a bone if he nominates her and they don't confirm her until after the election, then it stays up in the air. He's gotten to put it on record who it says this is who you'll get. If you come out and vote for me, you'll get Amy Coney Barrett. And I think it's intentional that he picks a woman here so nobody can attack him in that direction on the identity politics of it. He's replacing one white woman with another white woman. So nothing lost, nothing gained there from an identity politics standpoint. And so, yeah, he's by putting her on the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh becomes the swing vote, apparently. And so you have a right-wing court, Clarence Thomas, Brett Kavanaugh, and Andrew Gorsuch, and now it would be Amy Coney Barrett. So who's the other one? Roberts. And so you have a situation where the likelihood, let's be real here, the likelihood is that the Republicans are going to get through their pick, whether it's before the election or during the lame duck session, if Joe Biden even manages to win this election. Because we got a story that we're going to do in an upcoming episode about just the way that Joe Biden's been treating the progressive base recently, and how that could affect his chances in likely, could hurt his chances. So when you depress your own voters by spitting in their face. So here Trump is throwing meat to his base and, throwing red meat to his base. And meanwhile, Joe Biden is spitting in the face of his base. So we'll see how that ends up playing out in the election. But I think that if anything, it works in Trump's favor. Of course, there's so much else going on in this election, and that honestly, I think it's just a total, I don't know which way the election's going to go at this point. I don't know who's going to win that election because there's so much unprecedented stuff about you got a Supreme Court nominee, a Supreme Court justice that dies 40 days out from the election, and it's a pandemic, and we're in the middle of an economic crisis, an economic catastrophe, greatest depression in American history. And so, yeah, as X says, playing the game, how much damage can Trump do to society? This is the damage that's being done. It's where the American response, the U.S. response to the pandemic has been the worst in the world. We've been the number one worst, highest number of cases, highest number of deaths, 4% of the world's population, 24% of the world's COVID-19 deaths. So 6 times the rate of our population. So Shin says thousands of protesters should disrupt the confirmation hearing. Yeah, sadly, they put it on the American people who are already everyone's just worn out. It's the middle of a pandemic. It's not safe to be, gathering publicly as much. It's people are more afraid than ever. It's a really shitty time to put this on the American people. But that's essentially what they're doing, is saying only if the American people go out there, and let's be real, I don't know how much power we have to affect the change here. I think that if you're talking about in some swing states, if you go out there, if you push on folks like, Tony Ernst, who else? I'm blanking right now. I don't know why, but there's a few others who have some close. Susan Collins is another, who have close races that could be, are in purple states where they could definitely. There's races in Arizona, 2 in Georgia, South Carolina, where there's some close races, and they could go in either way right now based on polling. And so, maybe you have you can apply some pressure to those senators. And so you should certainly be, if you're in one of those places, make phone calls. If your senator has a close race that they're facing, make some phone calls, do that, fight in that way. If you feel like that's an effective fight to fight, and, protesting the confirmation hearing certainly could work. Shin asks, have you ever heard of David Pakman? Yes, I've certainly heard of David Pakman. I used to watch a lot of David Pakman, but unfortunately, I do not any longer. Just don't rock with a lot of his, some of his more neoliberal, pro-capitalist sort of positions. Some of his foreign policy stuff was really weak. When it came to, and I didn't like what he was doing with AOC. Shin says, vote out the Republicans who confirm her. So, yeah, you can do that, but it doesn't. It's not going to change the fact that she's in there. You can vote them out, but let's be real. By the time those people come up for election, that's going to be in the back of people's minds for a lot of for some of these senators. If it's after this election, this upcoming election. If they hold off on nominating and they don't confirm until after the election, then there's a lot of, it's going to be 2, 4, even 6 years for a lot of senators before they're up for any, in any challenge in any race. And then what's on people's mind at that point. So I'm not sure that that's going to matter, unfortunately. Vote them out for sure. I mean, just because they're terrible, and we should be voting out Republicans everywhere because they're not, they don't they're not for the people, they're for corporations, and they are too far gone. And so we certainly shouldn't be putting Republicans in power, generally speaking, but we got to also keep an eye on the Democrats that we put on power, because a whole bunch of them are, are terrible and owned by Wall Street and pharma, big pharma and the fossil fuel industry. And so folks like Dianne Feinstein and, old Chuck Schumer over there in New York with Wall Street, like these people are, they're most of those two parties, all of the Republican Party is corrupted. The Republican Party power structure is corrupted. And then most of the Democratic Party power structure is corrupted at this point. And so don't just vote out the Republicans who confirm, or vote out the Democrats who allow this to happen in the first place, right? Let's all remember that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was 80 years old when Obama was elected to a second term in 2013. She was 80 years old and battling with some of the most life-threatening forms of cancer, okay? So Ruth Bader Ginsburg was 80 years old, battling some of the most life-threatening forms of cancer. At 80, she had her whole career. She had done great things. Everybody knew who she was. She would have been, laying in state and given all the honor and grace that comes along with that. And her legacy would have been upheld. But now it has to be, part of her legacy has to be recognized as the fact that she allows this to happen by not retiring at 80 years old. I mean, in Canada, at 75 years old, all Supreme Court justices are forced to retire at 75 years old in the highest courts of Canada. At 75 years old, all justices retire. And so why can't we have a law like that? I heard Ro Khanna proposed 18-year term limits for all Supreme Court justices. Cool. I think that's cool. It's that way we don't have to, it doesn't have to be like ageist. It can be whatever age they come in there. They get 18 years and that's all they get. And that's, I'd be totally fine. They could rotate out every 2 years. They could be rotating out, and that would be, we would totally replace the bench every 18 years. We would be totally cycling, getting a new bench every 18 years. I think that's a fine and fair and just proposal right there. Shin says, David Pakman said the government forcing his business to become a worker co-op is authoritarian imposition. Libertarian much? Yeah, that's where he has this idea, David Pakman does, that socialism is inherently authoritarian and somehow doesn't see capitalism as inherently authoritarian. Somehow a system, capitalism, where a handful of people, the employer, the board of directors, and the major shareholders, that handful of people have all the power have all the decision-making power over the masses of workers. They get to decide who gets to work, how you work, where you work, when you work, and what they do, whatever gets done with all the surplus of your labor. That's all decided by a handful of people in capitalism. And that system isn't seen as authoritarian to David Pakman somehow. But the system that we espouse, the system that David Pakman's own professor, David Pakman was a student of economist Richard Wolff, a Radical Democracy show favorite, economist Richard Wolff. David Pakman went to UMass Amherst, was taught by Richard Wolff himself, and therefore has zero excuse to walk away not recognizing democratic workplace, democratic socialism, 21st century socialism, democracy in the workplace as the idea of socialism, modern day socialism. So he has zero excuse not to recognize what we call socialism as inherently more democratic, more egalitarian than his capitalist, than the capitalism he favors. And so the idea that the system where we say one person, one vote on all major decisions, that's what we're talking about. When we talk about socialism, it's not big C communism. It's not what they call authoritarian socialism, where you have essentially, it's what Richard Wolff would refer to as state capitalism. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about democratic socialism, one person, one vote on all major decisions. And for a is it authoritarian of the state? Here's my question to David Pakman. Was it authoritarian of the state to come in and declare that no business could own another person's labor, could implement slavery? Was it authoritarian of the government to come and do that? If it was, well, then you know what? I support that form of authoritarianism right there. And it's not authoritarian. Let's be real. That's the government coming in and creating more democracy, which is inherently anti-authoritarian, right? To create more democracy, right? Means you don't have an autocracy. So you're disseminating power amongst the people. So to say that the government coming in and imposing a democratic workplace on businesses would be authoritarian, to me is almost to the point of nonsense. It's to say, okay, sometimes the government has to come in and step in and say, you know what, the way that you are doing business is immoral, is inhumane, and we will not allow that. And so we did it in the case of somebody owning another person's labor. We said, no, that is abhorrent. And I believe that one day we will look at the idea of renting another person's labor just as abhorrently. And so the idea that it would be authoritarian, no, it's not authoritarian to go and say you have to be less authoritarian. It's not authoritarian to come in and say you are not allowed to be authoritarian. That's not authoritarian. That's literally us as a people democratically deciding we don't want this in our society anymore. We don't want this in our society. And people like Richard Wolff, they don't even say we need to do that. I'm not out here saying we have to do that. What I argue in favor of is allowing it to have a chance to grow, right? Just let democratic, workplaces, don't fight them in oppress them. Just allow them the room to grow. Give them the same advantages that we give capitalist businesses in this country. Capitalists have all kinds of lobbyists in Congress. Everybody in Congress is a capitalist. I just want equal representation for socialist businesses and allow people, if we had real freedom of choice in this country, you would have the freedom to choose what kind of business you wanted to work at, what type of businesses you wanted to shop at. You in this country, you don't get to choose whether you want to shop at a capitalist business or a democratic, socialist business, because we don't support democratic socialist workplaces. In the Emilia-Romagna region of Spain, they have a law called the Marcora law, where if you become unemployed, you can get together with 9 other unemployed people. If they all agree to do the same thing, the government will give them their unemployment payment, all of it up front, a lump sum amount up front, as long as that those 10 or more people agree to join together into a democratic workplace. And that has now created a situation where 1/3 of the region of that region of Italy, their GDP, their gross domestic product is generated through worker cooperatives, through democratic workplaces. And so there, the people have a real freedom of choice, more of a freedom of choice than we have here, right? Because we're given the illusion of a freedom of choice, but I don't have the freedom to choose what kind of workplace I want to work in, what kind of business places I want to shop from. I'm always forced to go into to use the capitalist business right now, because those are the ones being subsidized by our government right now. I just want democratic workplaces to get the same subsidies, to allow those places to exist, stop being against them, and then give people the choice. And I think over time, people will choose they would rather work in a place where they're not owned, rented by somebody and treated like, this disposable, expendable employee, and instead have, power and autonomy over themselves, and be able to participate in the decision-making process in their workplaces. Then you won't have the situation where like people will be packing, give a group of workers a vote on whether or not they want to pack up and move all the work to another state or another country. And unless everybody's down to move, then no, that's not going to happen. And people aren't going to lose, mass, hundreds and thousands of people losing jobs to exploitative outsourcing practices by corporations. So that's what I'd have to say to David Pakman on the idea that is in any way authoritarian. So thank you for that comment there, Shin. Appreciate that. So yeah, if you're just joining us, Donald Trump has announced his Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, and we are just discussing what next at this point. So back to, getting back to that discussion, I think that there's some questions still about what the Democrats in power are going to do. What are the Chuck Schumers and Nancy Pelosi's going to do? But Nancy Pelosi has already signaled that she's not really willing to do anything radical to block this nominee. And we all know, what the Democrats do. They fold. They always fold. Whatever happens, we all know what the Democrats do, always, without fail. It's the one thing that you can really count on them for. So what I think that's going to happen next, unfortunately, is that the Democrats will end up doing whatever will play right into the Republicans' hands here, with whatever the Republicans are the ones that are in control at this point. They're the ones that are going to dictate the terms of this, and so what I get frustrated over is, and what I get angry about is not just the fact that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had an opportunity to retire at 80 years old, and allow Justice Barack Obama, newly inaugurated, second term president Barack Obama, to fill that vacancy. He would have had, years in advance. They couldn't have used this lame argument of, oh, you can only fill in the, you can't fill a seat in the final year. And look how weak the Democrats were. I get angry about that too. Look how weak the Democrats are here. They didn't get that Supreme Court pick through. And it was a centrist. It was it wasn't some radical person that they picked or anything like that. This was just a run-of-the-mill centrist, Merrick Garland, that Obama had nominated. And they blocked him for 9 months. They managed to block Obama for 9 months in 2016. And meanwhile, it looks like the Democrats aren't even going to be able to hold out for a month and a half here, really. It's like they only have to hold out for a month at this point. The election is it's right around the corner. It's practically a month away at this point, the election. So we're less than 40 days out from this election. And the Democrats appear to already be bending the knee here to the Republicans and saying they will entertain a hearing. If she gets a hearing, she's getting nominated. I guarantee you. I mean, they've got enough votes just from the Republicans alone. They've got enough votes. It's not it's not a Brett Kavanaugh. It's not like there's any kind of controversy, and they still got enough votes for Brett Kavanaugh. So these folks they got, Mitt Romney. We recently did the story. Mitt Romney came along. They're already got 51 votes. So they know that they can get her nominated. They don't need a single Democrat in order to get her nominated. So the moment that the Democrats entertain a hearing, that's it. It's over. If they have the hearing, she's nominated. It's over. So if you see a hearing begin, just know that within days we're going to be talking about the next Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett. So, and she's somebody who her vote is a vote against the ACA, against Roe v. Wade. She's got far right views, and so particularly culturally, not the economic stuff is all where they're all at, which is like around center rightish type stuff economically, and that's what they all, no matter, even if we got Merrick Garland, we were going to get that. Even Ginsburg, Ruth Bader Ginsburg to some extent, these people are centrist at best, but really center right economically. So in our, that's what our Supreme Court is just filled with, unfortunately. So this, the best hope for Democrats would be that they would somehow be able to block this vote from, block this nomination from happening by, refusing to go through with the nomination process. The Republicans could just steamroll right through that, but they might not because of the political impact of that could have on the Senate races. But the sorry, I'm just trying to pull up an article here for us. Just want to pull up this article about them, them not, there are people protesting outside of like Chuck Schumer's house saying, telling them to block. But Feinstein, like I said, has already come out and said that she will not block the nominee. They don't need all these people. They don't need a whole bunch of folks to do it. So again, they need none of them. They need no Democrats really, so they can do it if they want to, and they can get the vote through. Let me see. Do we have any comments we want to get to? Yeah. X says, why did the Democrats always fold? Has to be intentional. They want to appear to oppose Republican power plays, but every year society moves further right. You're 100% correct. They're paid by the same donor class. They're paid by the same donor class. So it's how it's hedging a bet, right? They hedge their bet. So they buy out the Republicans entirely, and then they throw a little bit to the Democrat in case the Democrat wins, and then they still got them in their they're in their pocket. And so, and all the while the Republicans, either hold their ground or shift further to the right, while the Democrats are the only party that ever talks about like bipartisanship. Oh, we got to be bipartisan and we got to do these bipartisan things. Joe Biden coming out here espousing bipartisanship. Did Donald Trump win talking about bipartisanship? Does anyone think that Donald Trump won because he was out there talking about how bipartisan he was going to be? Like, no, he was out there talking about build a wall, lock her up. And just all these, like, it was just like, hey, I'm not going to cut your health care. You're not going to lose your Social Security. You're not going to lose your Medicaid. We're going to, George Bush got us into terrible wars. They were awful wars. So that kind of rhetoric, it was populist rhetoric that got him to the presidency. It's not this like idea of bipartisanship. So one party is out here always agreeing that they're going to compromise with the other party, and the other party says, all right, well, we're just going to keep shifting to the right, and if you're always willing to compromise, if we just go further to the right, then you'll compromise to our position. Then that becomes your new position after a while, because you get so stuck, and you can trick enough people to be defending that. Like the ACA, they got people out here so worried, like, oh, we're going to lose our ACA, that they're not concerned about the fact that the ACA leaves 50,000 Americans dying without, at least 50,000 Americans by conservative estimates. 47,000 Americans die every year without health insurance under the ACA. And then another over 500,000 end up bankrupt. And as we saw from the recent 2019 poverty report put out by the U.S. Census Bureau, 7.7 million people were pushed into poverty because of medical expenses. So there's, but people are so concerned about having to defend the ACA because that becomes the new position, even though we wanted a public option. In beyond that, we want a Medicare for all plan, and beyond that, we want nationalized health services, right? Like what they got in the UK. And so, but our position keeps on getting shifted to the right in a compromise, because our party is the one always willing, our party, the Democratic Party, let me say, because it's not my party, I'm independent. So the Democratic Party is always willing to compromise and to shift to the right, while the Republicans never move, they never bend. And so the country just continues to slide right. X says, one thing that irks me about TMR is that's the majority report, is that they still don't seem to grasp why the Democrats always fail. Like, really? Get a clue. Exactly. These people are paid to lose. Like, I get frustrated by that too. I used to get so frustrated because I'm always like, also, like, because I hate when people act like they're just like like they're just dumb and unwitting about this all. But it's like, they're not dumb. They're maintaining power still. They're still holding on to power. As much as we're like, oh, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi must be morons. Look how long they've been in power. This shit isn't accidental. They know how to hold on to power. And so this isn't, they can put on all this performance, but we know exactly what is going to come of this. And anything that we talk about is like, I swear, some of what I'd say is still, it's me trying to put out a hopeful thinking and not try to completely put out the message of despair. But oftentimes inside, it's like, what I'm really feeling is like, no, there's no hope for this Democratic Party. Like, there's no hope for these people. It's just going to continue this slide to the right because they're intentionally weak. They're paid to lose. And so I'm never surprised. I'm never really surprised by this stuff. It's always like, no, this is exactly what it's set up to. This is how the system has been set up and designed to work. It's working like a charm right now. And no matter who wins, no matter who wins in November, the wealthiest people, they're happy. Like, they got a whole bunch of poor people, poor white folks, a bunch of poor black folks out here, all, their hearts like torn and they're just twisted up and stressed out and under so much just strain and burden because they're all worried about like, oh, this Supreme Court nominee. These people in power, the Democrats that actually have the power to do anything about this, they don't give a fuck about us. Like, they don't care about what happens to the rest of us. They're perfectly fine. They're going to have their great health insurance. They're going to be living fine. They got millions of dollars. They got, their big donors are going to keep their pockets lined. They're doing just fine. We're all going to suffer. They're nice and they can be socially distanced and they got all their little mansions to go run off to and their $1 million homes and they're all good. But the rest of us, while we suffer, there's no party out there right now. None of these two major parties represent any of our best interests. Neither of them are representing our best interests. And at best, what we're going to get is somebody who will set up a further shift to the right over time. And it's just like, and we've got people, everyone is there. We're personally like, we're all like ripped up about, holy Donald Trump is going to get elected and he's a danger to democracy. Go check out, there's a picture of, let me pull up. This was a picture of Trump and Schumer, just like yucking it up. Like these people are, they try to give us this illusion of like, oh, they must be so adversarial to one another and like, oh, but I saw a picture yesterday, recently of them like, just laughing it up and stuff together. And it's like, they're not, they put on a performance, as X said. It's all a performance. It's just performative what they're doing there. They act like they're actually adversarial, but they're not really concerned. They're not actually putting on, if they were actually adversarial, if there was actually any real resistance, there would be no question about not putting a hearing through. Are you kidding me? They didn't let your nominee through for 9 months, and you can't hold out for 40 days to just 40 days to at least, politically it's the right move. Like, politically, if we're being real here, put that thing on the ballot and you'll get more people, riled up about this stuff. People are going to be really, I feel like it's going to create a feeling of defeat in a lot of people if they just let Donald Trump ram this nominee through. So, but anything that we put out there is like holding out this false hope that like things are going to get, like they're going to put up some, maybe this time there's going to be some resistance. And so like, even with these recent protests, I'm just starting to feel like, over Breonna Taylor, that just, it's starting to feel like it's not having the impact we thought it was. And we're going to do a story about how, the Minneapolis City Council, who promised to dismantle the police department and completely rebuild something entirely new in its place. That's what they promised. They have completely reneged on that promise. Nothing has come of that. So all these gains that we thought we made through all of our protests, everything we do, the votes, we voted for the lesser of two evils. I went out, I voted for Hillary in 2016. I went and knocked on doors for Hillary in 2016. Like, I tried, we did you do your part. You do everything that you can, and still we just see the country continue to slide to the right. Shin says, if Democrats lose the 2020 election and they move more to the right as a result, the good side of that is that it will encourage more people to vote third party. I wish, but honestly, I just don't know. They do this thing every 4 years, every 2 to 4 years, they'll manage to do this thing where they will drum it up so that no matter what election it is, voting third party, it's always the most dire election of our lifetimes. The other person that the Republicans are going to nominate, because the Republican Party is really terrible at this point. They're really awful. They're so far to the right, as Noam Chomsky said, they've fallen off the political spectrum at this stage. And so whoever they nominate is going to be some terrible, abhorrent person who wants to, who hates poor people and wants to, give tons of money and tax cuts to corporations at the expense of working class people. That's just what it's going to be. And they're going to be able to threaten folks with that and say, listen, if you don't nominate our terrible, awful, horrendous candidate that will do all of those same things, but won't tweet bad about it, then you're going to get this monster out here. And if you vote for third party, you are part of the problem. Look at, they're still doing it from 2016. Right now, Jill Stein is trending on Twitter right now. Jill Stein is trending on Twitter because people are out here blaming Jill Stein and blaming Jill Stein voters for, going and voting for the candidate that they liked best. I thought that that's what democracy was, under the assumption that those voters would have had to go vote for Hillary Clinton in the other case. Like, as if they didn't vote for Jill Stein, if Jill Stein wasn't on the ballot, like, those voters would have gone out and voted for Hillary Clinton, as if they just know that. Also ignoring the fact that there was a third party, candidate on the right who got way more votes than Jill Stein, more than double the votes of Jill Stein, and nobody's talking about him. So if anything, a third party candidate helped Hillary Clinton to not get her ass whooped as like any worse through the electoral college. Let's be real, because she won by 3 million votes. Let's be honest, we don't live under a real democracy. If we did, the person with the most votes would have won, and we wouldn't be talking about this mess right here, right now. But we don't live in a democracy, and maybe you should be more concerned about that than about going to vote for this election. Because if you don't have I got ranked choice voting on the ballot in Massachusetts, like, that's a reason to go out and vote. That's a way to change, to expand democracy to people. And if you're talking about measures like that through direct democracy measures, for sure, definitely go out and vote about that. Go out and vote about local races, down ballot stuff, and go out and vote if you're in a swing state, or if you're wherever you are. If you feel like Joe Biden is going to save us from, the fascist Donald Trump, and that Trump is the worst, the worst thing, and he's the whole cause, and he's the reason for racism in America and all that sort of stuff. Whatever you believe, if you believe, Joe Biden, voting for Joe Biden for whatever reason, honestly, I don't, whatever the reason is, I don't, go vote for Joe Biden. Like, do whatever you're going to do in this upcoming election, do it. But then also try to look for other ways that we're going to have to start to work, because unfortunately, the sad, it's not a message that's as flowery, or it's as sexy as, the idea of going to vote, because voting, you get an instant gratification from it. Let's be real. You vote typically the same day, right? Most people vote on election day. Typically you vote, and that same day that you vote, you usually know the results of your vote, right? So you get to do your vote, you do your participation, and then you get an instant result. That's a really dramatic one typically too, because we've drummed it up to be really dramatic at this point. Because it's, there's usually the GOP's running some monster, and then you got this other, center. So who, what's it going to be? Neoliberal oligarchy or neo-fascist oligarchy? Which one are you going to get? And people are, it creates drama around it. And so you then have, people that end up, feeling like they have to invest all that time into it and stuff. And like that, that's democracy right there. That's us participating in democracy. That's the way that we're going to change things, is through this thing where we get to do it once every 2 years, and then we get the little quick instant gratification from it, and then we don't got to deal with it really for another 2 more years. Or if we do deal with it, we have to go pour in our lives and our free time into this thing that every 2 years, we do it every 2 to 4 years, and somehow it continues to swing the country right. So whatever we're doing right now, it's it's not working. It's not working right now. And we got to start to think more radically. And that's why I talk about, things like local sustainability and democracy in the workplace and in radical democracy, building more democracy into our economy, into the food industry. And that's what, local sustainability is about, building more democracy into our nutrition, into our food industry, democracy in our housing, democracy in our workplaces. And speaking of which, please, if you haven't done so already, sign up, support us on Patreon, please. You can find links in the description box below, patreon.com/radical democracy. Please, check that out. Support us on Patreon. We got our 10th Patreon supporter on yesterday's stream. So shout out to our newest Patreon patrons, Jamiko, the producer, of course, and Christina Sun. Thank you so much, Christina, yet again, to our newest patrons for their support. We're at 10 Patreon patrons. Not a lot, right? We're just a tiny little organization here. Help us to grow, help us to exist for as low as $1 a month. Patreon.com/radical democracy. If you haven't done it already, you should absolutely go sign up, support us. If you want to do just a one-time tip, because we don't have super chat enabled yet, for just a one-time tip, no account required, you can leave a comment. We'll read your comment on stream here. Go to coffee.com/radical democracy. You'll see it down there, as well as in the description box below. You can click the link in the description box below and head over there, drop us a tip. Again, whatever you can afford, we really deeply appreciate it. Support independent left media, support independent Black media here. We need the support. We are a tiny organization, but we are trying to grow a democratic workplace. One person, one vote in all major decisions in this media organization here. And so we want to build democratic media, a democratic media organization. So build democracy this way, because our democracy is running away from us. Our democracy was literally hinging on the health of an 87-year-old woman with life-threatening cancer for years. For 7 years, we let it hang, by a thread like that, with Obama in power, and we left it alone. And then this is what came of it. So, it's rather unfortunate, but they should have seen this coming. This shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone. The Democrats should have saw this coming. They should have known that, we had, after Antonin Scalia suddenly passed, like, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was way older than Antonin Scalia. Like, it's like she's the oldest justice. Everybody knows it. She wasn't in great health even then. And people were pushing for it back then. And they said things like people were sexist and misogynist for suggesting. They say the leftists were misogynist for suggesting that Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Why the woman? Why the woman? Because she's 80 years old and she's got cancer. That's why the woman. Like, we replace her with another woman. You can replace her with a Black woman or a brown woman. Why? What do you mean? Like, why does it? Nobody said you can't replace her with a woman. So you heard all kinds of smears against people. So it's a shame. Shin says, you think she refused to retire because she liked the power too much? I think it was an ego thing. Yeah. And so certainly there's a power element to it.
I also think she was waiting because she thought Hillary would win.
Oh, and Tammy says she also thinks that she was waiting because she thought Hillary would win. And I see. So Tammy's saying, like, she might have been thinking of it as of like, Hillary Clinton's going to be next. I can retire when a woman is president as well. And like the whole thing behind that. I get it. And that's a good point. I suppose, unfortunately, that is a good point.
She ran against Obama the first time, and then she didn't during his second run for second term. So like, I figured she knew Hillary would wait a little.
Yeah. So Tammy's just saying that she.
Like a personal thing, I get that.
Yeah. So I get that argument, but also it's like, I get the cosmetic niceness of all of that, but we're talking about if you really care, is it worth rolling the dice? Because We didn't know who the Republicans were going to nominate. We didn't know they were going to nominate Donald Trump or anything like that. They would have assumed that it would just be a run-of-the-mill Republican, and there should have been some thought that there was some chance that they could have lost. So the idea that you just are guaranteed an election is an almost absurd thought to me. And so it's irresponsible. It was irresponsible of her to do that. And so I think that maybe it was the power, maybe it was ego, honestly. And maybe it was what Tammy said, the idea of, and that's an ego element to that too, of just, oh, I want to retire and go out on a woman president sort of thing. That's also just putting your ego over the actual substantive rights of human beings. And so it's like, Brian Dew says, shout out to our Patreon patron supporter. Thanks for being here, Brian. Shout out to Brian here. Brian says, she was trying to write a good ending to our fanfic. Exactly. Like, it's like she's trying to, this is supposed to be like, put the fairy tale ending on her already fairy tale story. And it was at the expense of all the rest of us. Like, look at what's happening to us right now. This was avoidable and it was foreseeable. And the idea that, no, it's not that caused it. It's those 2016 Jill Stein voters, those like 2 million people or whatever it was. Meanwhile, 100 million people who didn't vote. They're not concerned that why did 100 million people not vote? And I'm not blaming the 100 million people who didn't vote. I'm not saying it's their fault. I'm saying it's the fault of the politician who couldn't convince some of those 100 million people to go and vote for them. That's the job of the politician. That's who has the power. That's who has all the power. It's their responsibility to get themselves elected, to convince people. Joe Biden right now, it's still up in the air whether he's going to win or not. It would be a lot easier for Joe Biden to win if he supported something like Medicare for all in the middle of a global pandemic where tens of millions of Americans just lost their job in the middle of a pandemic and lost their health insurance at the same time. What else do you need to see? What else do you need to see to realize that we don't need, that it's unsafe and unstable to leave millions of Americans with employer-based healthcare? What more do you need than COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing lockdowns? Mark McKeever says, wow, sounds like you did more to elect Hillary than Hillary actually did. What a failed campaign she had. Yeah, like, yeah, it's crazy. Like, honestly, and back then it was like I was campaigning against Trump, really. I was knocking on doors and people would ask me, like, why should I vote for Hillary? And my arguments were always like, because Trump is so terrible. You can't let Trump go and be the president. Like, I didn't even know what her platform was. I honestly didn't know her platform. And I was out there knocking on doors for her in another state, in New Hampshire. And so it was a weird scenario. Mark McKeever says, I voted third party in 2016 here in Arizona because during the primary, my voting status mysteriously changed from Democrat to independent. Couldn't vote for Bernie. He finally got my vote this year's primary. That's awesome. Yeah, I was able to vote for Bernie for the first time in this year's primary as well, 2020 primary. I didn't vote in any primary my entire life until 2018 was the first primary that I ever voted in. It was in 2018. And then I got to vote in the, presidential primary, of course, in 2020. But I voted in primaries in 2018 for more local elections, House races. I voted for Ayanna Pressley, for instance, and I know she's not perfect. Trust me, I got plenty of critique about Ayanna Pressley. So Oshi Fancy says, I'm digging them nails. Thank you, Oshi Fancy. I appreciate it. Thank you, Oshi Fancy. That's so kind of you. So kind. Oh, my. There it goes. There's my focus. Thank you, Oshi Fancy. Appreciate it. There's been so much hate on my nails recently for some reason on the streams. Like, I've gotten so much hate. It's so weird. There's been a bunch of trolls that come in. We had the person from that company that who we assumed to be what appeared to be a spokesperson for the company who built that app that is an Uber for evicting people. It's Uber for evicting people. And the spokesperson for that company was in our chat the other day when we were doing a story on it. The spokesperson for the company was in our chat, like trolling and like, talking garbage about my nails. And we had another person, I'm just like, why the hate? Stop hating, y'all. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful. All right. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful, y'all. All right. No. So just teasing. X says, remember when they literally chained Jill Stein to a chair so that she couldn't participate in the debates? No, I did not know that literally happened. Literally, like, what the hell? I need to find that. What the hell? I did not know that. That's absurd and insane. And no, I didn't know that that was the case. But look what they did. I mean, the Democratic Party is out there removing the Green Party from ballots in different states. They did it in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin. They're trying it in Texas. I believe in Montana as well. They may have already done it, and I think they may have successfully done it in Montana as well. And so they're removing the Green Party from the ballot. Like, what does that do other than depress voter turnout? I mean, that just angers people like me and folks that wanted to come out and vote and may have voted down ballot for other Democratic candidates. There's a whole bunch of Democratic candidates that might not get votes that they could have gotten if somebody was going out there to vote for Green Party for the presidential race, but maybe there's some, down ballot candidate. Now they can't go vote for their candidate because they feel they've been slighted now in an anti-democratic process. And what does the Democratic Party do? They fight against the Green Party and then smear them as like GOP friendly, because the GOP is of course going to try to help because they see it as favoring them for whatever reasons. Who cares? They happen to be on the right side of democracy and the right side of history. So, whatever. I don't care that the GOP is backing them. That doesn't mean that you don't support the right thing because some immoral person happens to also support that thing as well. So yeah. So that's that. But yeah, so I'm as far as this pick goes for SCOTUS here, I think we all wait with bated breath here to see what the Democrats will do, but I think we know what they're going to do. And unfortunately, it's not anything that we're going to like. I think that Coney Barrett is going to be nominated and confirmed to the Supreme Court. I honestly don't know whether it will happen before the election or after. And I think that is totally in the hands of the Republicans. I think whatever the Republicans want is what will happen here. So if the Republicans want to nominate before if they want to confirm before the election, because they see some benefit to that, if they see that as more beneficial, if they're concerned that they won't be able to do it in a lame duck session or anything like that. And so therefore they see it as necessary and politically expedient to do that, I think they'll get it done that way. Unfortunately, if they want to confirm, if they want to hold off and confirm in the lame duck session, if Joe Biden wins, I think they'll do that. And if Donald Trump wins, who cares? What happens there? He's going to nominate. She'll get confirmed. He's going to, she's going to get confirmed. I mean, he's already nominated. So Amy Coney Barrett, as we looked into her record the other day, she's a far right conservative. She's far right conservative justice. She's got a so she's held some anti-immigration stances. She's anti-abortion stances. So in not just anti-abortion, which means reproductive justice. Really is the reality is like you don't believe in simply the idea that women deserve to have the control over that all people, let's just say people, all people with vaginas, all people deserve to have total autonomy over their own body. And right now, for the most part, men do, just straight up men do, and women don't. And so so I think that so Amy Coney Barrett is she's also pro-gun rights, which is like, I don't know that there's the left is torn on gun rights at this point, and that's not the issue. That's not the hill I want to die on, no pun intended. But I'm mixed on gun ownership and as a leftist, and so that's not the issues that I put in the forefront. There are common sense policies I support for sure. Mandatory background checks, banning certain like putting some sort of bans on the sale of certain assault weapons, like preventing the sale of any sort of like sale of any like weapons of war, things like that. Like people don't need machine guns to hunt. Like you can hunt. I want people to have guns to hunt. Sure, they should be able to have guns to hunt, but I think that honestly, like if you're a skilled hunter, you absolutely should not need more than a like you know semi-automatic rifle of some sort, and not like some like no automatic weapons, or no fully automatic weapons or anything like that. Or the things that they can use, the accessories they can use, like bump stocks, in order to modify the weapon in order to do that. So I'm in favor of common sense legislation, but we have to be careful about how we impose those regulations, because is it like a fine or what? Because jail time, I'm not in support of, like, really, for like the possession or sale of weapons per se. I'm not in favor. I do not support jail time for that. It would have to be a civil penalty at that point, which then kind of puts it in the, unfortunately, like, civil penalties are not penalties for rich people. So I worry about that, and that's something that we have to reckon with. So if you have thoughts about that, on the left, please share your thoughts in the comments there, I think, because I'm torn on that. I really I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other, because I just on as far as like in Second Amendment, like, I support the Second Amendment generally speaking. I think by the letter of it, it's a good regulation to hold, like, but it does say a well-regulated militia, so it needs regulation. We obviously don't let people have tanks and rocket launchers, so we draw the line somewhere. The question is, where do we draw the line? And I think that it's easy to just move the line to be like, no fully automatic weapons. That's boom, easy line to draw for me right there. Like, that one, there's no debate to me on that. It's like, no fully automatic weapons, period. That should be, and so stop the sale of all of that. But then what's the punishment for it? Probably civil infractions, I think, honestly. That can be made up for with, like, maybe community service stuff. I don't know. Restorative justice type shit. Shin says, do you want to see Amy Barrett's speech? If you check out the beginning of the stream, I played Amy Barrett's speech at the beginning of the stream. So I played Donald Trump's at the very beginning of the stream. I played Donald Trump's speech as well as Coney Barrett's speech. So if you rewind back to the very beginning of this live stream, you can click back and go back. You'll see Trump's entire speech that he made before, in announcing his nomination speech for Coney Barrett. And then you'll see Coney Barrett's short speech. It was all total about 10 minutes or so, all total. So I think a little over 10 minutes. So check that out. It's at the very beginning of the show if you want to see her speech or Donald Trump's announcement. Shin says, you said people should be allowed to have guns to hunt, but hunting should only be allowed for survival, not recreation. I agree with that. That's a great point to make, and I'll get used to making that point more as I make make the case for this stuff. And so, yes, that's a great point. Thank you for pointing that out. I do think that hunting should not be for recreation. I do not believe in, like, recreational hunting. Hunt for survival, and that's it. And so, like, I understand the need to, like, I don't know. You can practice without having to practice on a live animal. So you can get all the skills you need, not on live animals. And then if you need to hunt to survive, then that's the only time you should be killing animals there. So yeah. Good point though. Thank you for that, Shen. Please, if you haven't done so, if you're still with us here and you haven't done so already, please hit the like button immediately. I think it's down there somewhere. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and share this stream out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you want to share it. Share it out wide, far and wide. Let folks know where they can find us and help us grow the channel. If you can afford to, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/radical democracy. There is a link in the description box below. So if you just open up the description box, click that link, you can head over to our Patreon, and for as low as $1 a month, sign up to be a Patreon patron. If you sign up for $5 or more, if you pledge $5 or more a month, you'll get access to our Discord server where you can chat with us, offline. You get a more direct line to me, and you can also do things like suggest news stories that you like to see covered. We've already covered a few stories here suggested by Patreon patrons. Shout out to What Up America and Brian Dew for 2 of the recent stories that we covered through suggestions off of our Discord server. So please join us if you would like to chat with us there. And you can also leave a one-time tip for us if you'd like to do essentially a super chat while we await the super chat feature to be enabled. You can do so by heading over to coffee.com/radical democracy. That's ko-fi.com/radical democracy. And you can find a link to coffee in the description box below as well. Those donations are your support, your financial support is the lifeblood of the show. It's the only way that we can survive and continue to exist. We are independent media. We are not corporate sponsored. We do not have any kind of advertisers, no advertising. And so we need your support, grassroots. Why can't I say that? Sorry. Grassroots support in order to continue to exist and to grow. So please support us here on the Radical Democracy Show by dropping us, a little bit of funds either on Patreon or Coffee there. All right. Thank you so much for being with us still, to all of our, everyone in the community there. Appreciate all the comments and for, everyone sharing their thoughts there. Please, if you have any other thoughts on this, anything you'd like to share, drop us a comment, in the chat there, or if you're watching this after the fact, just leave a comment below. And we do, I read every single comment, even if I can't always respond to everyone. I definitely read everyone. So please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or, questions, anything like that. All right. So, I don't know, what else really can be said about this. I think that this is, a situation where we just kind of have to see where the Democrats take this. Unfortunately, the ball's really in their court at this point. At this stage, Trump's done his nomination. If the Democrats just decide to roll over and walk in and just go through with the hearings, then that's just going to be what it is. And there's not much that we're going to be able to do to stop that. I mean, we can protest outside of the Democrats, like homes and offices, and make phone calls to those Democrats, Chuck Schumer and, Dianne Feinstein. She's the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, who is the group that even allows that the nomination hearing to begin. So they have to pass through the committee first. And so, Dianne Feinstein has a lot of power here, Chuck Schumer as well. So you can certainly, make your voice heard with them, do whatever you can to make phone calls to them, and hit them up on Twitter, shout at them on there, and let them know how pissed you are about their lack of action, their inaction on this, if they decide not to do everything they can to block this pick. And so we'll see what they do as far as stopping it before the election. I think that's honestly just based on politics, really, what they'll do with that. But after the election, I think, all bets are off. Whatever happens, whether it's Biden that's elected or Donald Trump that's elected, I think that the Republicans will confirm Amy Coney Barrett. And there's not much that we're going to be able to do about that on the left, unfortunately. So, all right. So, all right. Well, I don't know. I'm just like, there's not much else. We could talk a little bit more about Amy Coney Barrett here and who she is. I mean, what's sort of expected of her, time on the court. But I mean, she's going to spend the next 40 years on the courts. We're going to have a right-leaning court on social issues. It definitely puts things like Roe v. Wade in danger of being overturned, puts the ACA in danger of being overturned. And there is, at this point, it's really on the Senate Democrats to do something to block this nomination from taking place. If they do go through with it, I mean, it would be extremely hypocritical, but unfortunately, hypocrisy just doesn't sway Republican voters. Trump is a hypocrite. Look at, Trump is the biggest hypocrite on earth. I mean, he's the dude is like running for like, he's got the most support from like evangelicals. They had like an 83% or 87% voter turnout, I believe, in the last election. And you know, the national average is like 55%, I think, voter turnout. And so you know, he gets this immense support from like, you know, religious folks, but meanwhile the dude has like had 3 marriages, he's cheated on all his wives, he is like a like, you know, he's just like a smutty dude. I don't know, he's just like the you know, he rips people off, and there's nothing that's really, you know, there's nothing Christ-like about this dude at all. He's not a real you know, religious person. It's all fake, you know, but they don't care about his hypocrisy. You know, it just doesn't have an impact on their voter base. So we can talk about it all we want and say, oh, that's hypocritical, but it's not going to do anything to actually change the outcomes for anyone. So we have to find another, you know, strategy. It's like, and for me, it's really what I guess I would add to this is just, you know, my thoughts are just, we don't need to be, it's the system itself that's the problem here. A system that allows everything to all of our hopes, our entire democracy, things that were essentially should be decided by in democratic ways, that, you know, whether healthcare is a political decision that should be made, it shouldn't be being made by the judiciary. So our judiciary just has too much power. If our judiciary can overturn a political decision like, you know, the Roe v. Wade, then, you know, sorry, then like the ACA, like that was done, that was an act of Congress there. If they can overturn something like that, then that means that we have the, you know, and we essentially have the courts not just interpreting law, but really deciding, you know, making political decisions in our, you know, so-called democracy, in our government. Then that's not a real democracy. We have a handful of people that are unelected, you know, justices, Supreme Court justices, that are the ones deciding on political questions like how should we, you know, provide healthcare in this society. And so I think that we have to look at ways to weaken the power of the judiciary at this stage. We could talk about court packing strategies, of course, but let's be real. I don't want Joe Biden packing the courts necessarily, because he'll pack the courts with more centrist. I mean, he can start it, I suppose. Fine. I'm fine with him doing a court packing strategy. But I think that what law professor Samuel Coyne was talking about on the Katie Halper show, she recently interviewed him, and he talked about the potential for filling the lower courts and packing the lower courts for sure, instead of having to change the law, because you have to pass a law that says that the Supreme Court is going to, first we'd have to pass a law that said that the Supreme Court would be expanded from 9 people to whatever number, X number, 11, 13, whatever it would be, 15. And so we'd first have to pass a law through Congress, which means getting a whole bunch of elected representatives to pass that legislation first. So, you know, good luck there, first off. But then after that, even the courts are going to fight it as well. And so you have to deal with that as well. And so you can do other things where you would simply like do what they call, I think it's called jurisdiction, jurisdiction shifting or something like that, where essentially what you do is you say that you write into the law that this law, like in the ACA, you would write a provision that said this law cannot be overturned by the courts. So if you wrote that into law, then what ends up happening is that, yes, that will also be challenged by the courts, but this way you don't have to pass a separate law. And then, because mind you have to pass a separate law for the Supreme Court justice, you have to pass a separate law, and then you have to get the Democrats to then make the nominations as well. So and of course, once you start that, once you open it up to court packing, then it can just become something where, okay, whichever party's in power, they just keep expanding the court by a few more justices and then putting their own justices on it. And they just keep going back and forth in this. And so we could be playing that game with our democracy forever. And it's just like, all the while, the country will just continue shifting to the right all the while. I guarantee you, it's just the way that it will go, because the way these fights play out between the Democrats and the Republicans. And so the country will continue to shift to the right all the while, and we will continue to lose control of our democracy. We have to do something serious to stop it. And it's why I continue to advocate for building democracy in the workplace. It's why I talk about it so much here, because I really do believe it's the fundamental change that we need to make in order to provide people with a real democracy and give people actual real democracy. And once we have that power, we can grow these democratic workplaces the same way that Mondragon grew their workplace into having over 100,000 people being able to build their own banks and their own schools and have their own security forces. And when we can do that, then that means that we have the power to control things like how our policing works and how our education system works and how we fund education. When we have our own banks and our own institutions to support these workplaces, we can pass, once we gain enough power economically through these democratic workplaces, we can then use that to fund our own politicians that we support, that we will then say, hey, you have to pass things like Marcora laws. We will help you gain power, but you will have to support democratic workplace, support democracy. If you believe in democracy, you will help us to support these democratic workplaces by passing things like the Marcora law that we discussed earlier. If you become unemployed, you can get 9 other people that are also unemployed together to agree that they will all get their unemployment payments up front in advance in a lump sum, as long as they all agree that they will open a democratic workplace, a democratically operated business. Then now all of a sudden we can have the same kind of growth in that region of that sector of the economy. We could create a worker cooperative sector of the economy. We don't have the supports in place to even create that sector right now. We don't have politicians that are even thinking of these ideas. What politician have you ever heard talk about the Marcora law? I've never heard this spoken of by a single politician in power. And so we need to get our people in power. But the only way we're ever going to get socialists in power is if we have economic power to support them. And the only way we're ever going to build economic power is by building democratic workplaces, focusing on mutual aid. And I think what the Black socialists in America, what they are focusing on, what is referred to as dual power, building dual power, building up our own institutions of power in technology and tools that we can use in left labor spaces, so that we can actually implement things like workplace democracy. How are we actually going to allow people to vote? How do we do it in a non-ableist way, where we're considering the people that might not be able to make it into the office, or immunocompromised people that can't be around other people, particularly during like a pandemic, but maybe in general. And so we have to have things to allow people to vote remotely and things like that. And how do you secure that? And so we're going to have to build our own technology. And so they also focus on the building dual power. And then while we do that, we also have to maintain an internationalist perspective all the while, not forgetting the shared humanity of people all over the world, not just all across the country, and not become so short-sighted that we don't fight those fights as well simultaneously, and that we don't stand in solidarity with those people who are struggling all around the world, working class people everywhere, so that our policies, when we're building foreign domestic policy, we keeping foreign policy in mind as well, and with the domestic policies that we espouse. So do we have any comments we want to get to, Tammy? We can take some comments soon if we have any. All right, no. All right, well, this doesn't have to be a crazy long stream here. I think that I will start to sign off if we don't have anything else to discuss here. Yeah. All right. So I think that we'll start to wind down the show here. This was just a breaking news segment. I will do a full episode on Monday, probably in the evening, but I might try an earlier episode. So maybe in the morning, maybe a Monday morning episode. We'll see about that. Maybe a Monday at, we might be able to do a Monday at 10 a.m. episode, something like that, to get some of our European comrades into the chat that we've been missing. Ben 2K hasn't been able to make it to a lot of our live streams because we've been doing them really late at night. So want to do something for all the comrades. So maybe we will try for an earlier stream on Monday. But yeah, if you have any thoughts, anything you'd like to well, let me. Tammy's just giving me the no. I can't. Oh, what about Jacobs, the pro? Okay. Okay. All right. I tell everybody comment and I'll ask me anything kind of thing. So, okay. All right. So Tammy's, that's Mama Bear there. Mama Bear says we can't. So she says no. Mama Pelosi's Mama Bear, as we all remember, AOC over there. Never forget, y'all. But I love AOC. I still got mostly love for AOC. No hate. Half of my profile pictures are a picture that I took with her way back before primary. I'm a long time supporter of AOC. I was literally like, I forget exactly where I was, but I was one of the first few thousand people, to ever donate to her. It might be hundreds, honestly. You can go back and you can see their history from every single donation that was made to them in like the order they logged them. And I think I'm in the top 1,000 donations. It could be even, further, it might be the first few hundred, but it's definitely like the first 1,000. And so, I'm an original AOC supporter from way back in the day, from like 2017, before her primary. And so nothing, got love for her and all that. But yeah, she slipped up with that Mama Bear comment about Nancy Pelosi for sure. So, all right. Let's, yeah, thank you so much to everyone for being here. Thanks for joining us for this stream. I'm gonna head out and just call it here. I always ramble on too long, and I'm doing it right now. All right, let me head out. If we don't have any other comments, I'll just give you a last few seconds there to say anything you want to say. Nope. All right, folks. Shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much to all of our Patreon community. Thank you for your continued support. Couldn't do this without y'all. So just thank you. And we will see you on our next episode. We got tons of stuff to talk about on the next episode. So looking forward to getting back with y'all then. All right, folks. Timmy, Phil, do you at the end thing? Feel free to throw it up anytime. All right, y'all. Peace.